with it perhaps 36 years ago. I think I was figuring in my office today when my oldest daughter, my other daughter, started in the Montessori community school here in town. Had a wonderful teacher, and from then on we were hooked. We would watch what we were doing in class. Kids loved to go to school, and it made it so that whatever Montessori wanted us to do, we did, because they just loved it as well. Coming back into Chaminade, I was here when we started our Montessori education program, which was in 1981, I believe, or 82, and with Sister Christina Trudeau. It was just wonderful to come down and watch the teachers doing the Montessori classes. And since then, I've been involved in Montessori in indirect ways, but by just watching the preschool. But I've also been fascinated by the kind of work we've been doing in Montessori at Chaminade. Now, Elizabeth told me I wasn't supposed to talk about Montessori teacher education, but I'm going to briefly add this. We've done several things that are very, very exciting. We've, I think, become basically, for at least a lot of people in the Montessori world, we are the place where you come for place-based education. If you want to see how to learn how to use the materials around you in a classroom, Chaminade's a good place to come for that. We're also the first university to go bring our Montessori program online, to the horror of the Montessori Society. We did it, and we think we've done it in a model, in a way that is caring and gets people involved. We are not only doing it online here in Hawaii, but we're doing it in China. We will start in Shanghai in about 2 months, and we think we'll start in Beijing in about 6 months. So Montessori is something that we're finding is a worldwide movement that is getting more and more people involved in it. And I happen to be on the board of the National Montessori Society. I like to believe it's because I'm so Montessori oriented, but it's not that. It's by what's going on here in Hawaii that put me there. And I think so you can all be proud of yourselves in your own schools when you start talking about what Montessori means. I think that's really important. My job, basically, was not to tell you all this. It was, A, to introduce you, B, to tell you where the bathrooms were, and 3, to introduce the director of Ho'aloha Kai. That's you. Denise Ackland. Please, Denise.
Thank you, and it's great to see everyone out here. And I personally want to thank Michael for actually, even though he wasn't supposed to bring it up and talk about it, I thank you because I think it's important to talk about the Montessori vision here in Hawaii and what you do here at Chaminade. It's great to see all these faces, and I had just commented to several people that we should actually do this twice a year. It's like a family reunion to see faces of all of us that believe so strongly about what we do in the future education of here in Hawaii, but all over for these children. And if you look around and if you think about each one of us, if each one of us had a voice to share that with 5 more people, think of how this room would grow over time. So I'm really excited about having Trevor here. My beginnings with Trevor began early on in 2009 when I discovered his book and then emailed him and said, guess what, I'm like in the middle of a economic downfall. I decided to start a school. And so I said, this is a great book, and this is my 2nd edition. It's marked up. The first one, all the pages fell out because I've used it so much. But before I say much more about Trevor, there are 2 people that I really want to recognize here tonight that this really wouldn't have happened for putting this on, and it's Elizabeth Parks and Hoku Chang. I really thank you. They worked very hard and diligently at putting this together, and I really am very grateful. And they're strong voices for all of us. So back to to Trevor, who will be up here in like 2 seconds. He inspired me when I read. What I loved about this book was the fact that I've had many aha moments in Montessori, but the thing I loved about this is my aha moment that I did not have to translate this from Italian. It was so great. I did not read the same sentence 50 times before I got it. And it was so practical, and even as an educator in doing this 30 plus years, it made sense to me, and I knew it would make sense to parents. So anytime I do a tour, I've always got this book in hand, and I just recommend it to everyone. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Mr. Trevor Eissler in a minute.
Wow, thank you for that warm welcome. Thank you, Denise. I really appreciate what you said about the book, and it's interesting. You're talking about being easy to read, and as you mentioned that, I remember thinking as I was typing late at night several years ago, whenever I see a multi-syllabic word, I'm going to chop it in two and make it into 2 easy words to make the book extra easy to read for parents. So I hope I haven't insulted your intelligence by doing that. But yes, I hope that it's easy for parents to get into. I want to start out by saying that I am not a teacher, and I am not Montessori trained. I'm not an administrator. I'm not even on the board at our children's school in Texas. I'm a parent, and I'm a pilot, and that's why I have this airplane up here, and we'll be talking aviation a little bit later. And the reason why I have it upside down on the lectern here is because it has a nice sloping runway, and I'm afraid it's going to take off. So I'm going to leave it right there for now. But yeah, I want to talk about aviation. I want to talk about my children. I have three young children. And most of all, I want to talk about what I have observed in Montessori classrooms. Because that's where I've learned most of what I've learned. I've read the Maria Montessori's books and waded through some of the flowery language, and most of what I've learned is watching. Sitting in my children's classes and seeing what's going on. One of the things I noticed really early on that was very interesting was a sense of confidence that the teachers had towards the children. And this was kind of unusual because I don't remember a sense of confidence that my teachers had in me when I was in school. I hate to say it, but I sensed more mistrust. As a teacher, if I leave the room, what's going to happen to all the children? It's going to be a madhouse. That type of thing. If I don't teach this child this math fact in this particular month of the curriculum, we're going to miss it and he'll never learn it. These types of kind of being on edge. I don't remember that sense of confidence that I was seeing these Montessori teachers exhibit. Where did this come from? The more I've thought about it and the more I've seen other classrooms, I've come to realize it's because of ownership. The children in these Montessori classrooms own their environment, own their learning, own their education in a much more profound level than when I was in school, and it was the teacher's responsibility to maintain order and to teach all the curriculum and do all this. In the Montessori classroom, the children own the learning, and the teacher just kind of recognizes that. I think that's where that confidence comes from. So I want to talk about that tonight. I want to zero in and focus on ownership. One of the first classrooms I observed was at elementary level. 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. I remember sitting in that chair in the classroom, well, a little tiny chair, right, way down here, and I remember looking around and seeing the various things going on. There was a girl lying on the floor, reading a book. The teacher was off in a corner giving a lesson to 2 or 3 students. Other things were going on. Another child was going out to work in the garden. right next to me were two boys seated at a table together, and they were working on a research project. They were writing a report. Those of you who have parents who have seen the Montessori classroom, you know that it's not an especially quiet place. I mean, it's not noisy. It's just that there's always a buzz. There's always a hum. There are things going on. Children are asking questions and answering them. They're getting up and going to get something off the shelf. The teacher's giving... There's stuff happening. Well, one of these two boys who was sitting next to me, he must have been 7 years old, he was writing, and then all of a sudden he stopped and said to his partner, It's getting a little noisy in here, don't you think? And I had never heard a 7-year-old say something like this, so I look at him, and he just kind of cocks his head to the side and listens. And his partner just keeps on writing. His partner was busy doing something, he didn't answer. So he listens for a few seconds, and then he stands up, puts his pencil down, walks across the room to where the door is, puts his hand on the light switch, dims the lights, turns the lights back on, walks all the way back across the room, sits down, picks up his pencil, and gets back to work. As if this was the most natural thing in the world to do. And me, my schooling, oh my God, I thought this guy was going to get struck by lightning, you know? I thought the teacher was going to send him straight to the principal's office. It was just a natural thing to do. And I realized this 7-year-old owns this classroom. If the noise level is too high for him to concentrate, it's up to him to do the predetermined signal to the rest of the class, hey, it's too noisy. It's not the teacher's responsibility to monitor the noise level of the classroom. Can you believe that? Ownership. My sister-in-law, another example, my sister-in-law is a sixth grade English teacher back in Texas, and she's not Montessori trained, it's not a Montessori school, 6th grade English teacher. This summer, she was pulling out her hair because she was so frustrated having to do all of these lesson plans. Now, I'm not a teacher. I've never done a lesson plan. I don't know what's on it. So I was asking her, why are you so frustrated with doing lesson plans? What's on them? And she was telling me what's on the lesson plan. Here's the assignment, and here's the homework, and here's the discussion questions. And I asked her, well, how many of these are you doing? And she said, I do a lesson plan for the whole year. Every day of the year. I said, no, really? I said, so you're telling me, this was this past summer, I said, so you're telling me, you know exactly what you're going to do on April 12th of 2012? Yes. She says, yes, I would pull out the April 12th lesson plan, and these are the discussion questions, here's the homework assignment, here's the answers, this tells me everything I want to do. And if I'm sick that day, a substitute teacher comes in, and she pulls out the lesson plan and just takes up where I left off. Works beautifully. And I said, wow, that's amazing. I had no idea that you planned out that far ahead in such a detail. The reason why it's so amazing to me is that I had just recently talked with a Montessori teacher who told me this story. She said, 2 years ago, the children in my class were into maps. And we did maps, it seemed like. We did the pushpin maps and the sandpaper maps, and we made the flags of the countries, and we cooked all these wonderful lunches from all the various foods from around the world. My children loved maps that year. And then she said, last year, my students were just into plays. And I had thought we would do one school play, but it turned out that we ended up doing 4 full plays throughout the year, because every time we do one, the children said, hey, can we do another play? So I'd say, okay, we'd come up with the script, and we'll make the costumes, and they did 4 plays. 2 years ago, she said, my children were into maps. Last year, it seemed like they were into plays. And then she says, it's so exciting because I have no idea what my children will get into this year. Compare those two classrooms. The one where the teacher knows precisely what question will be asked and what the correct answer is on April 12th of 2012. And this one where the teacher is so excited because she has no idea what is going to light that child's fire today. Imagine what that must feel like as a student walking in to each of those classrooms. You walk into this one in the morning. It's Monday, so you take a quiz. Friday, you take a test. Yesterday, you did the odd problems. Today, you're going to do the even problems. Chapter 14 yesterday, chapter 15. It's kind of like it's all been planned out. And walk into this classroom, and the teacher's looking at you with wide eyes, eagerly. What is going to turn this child on today? I know how to teach the history. I know how to teach the math and the science and the spelling and all that. How do I apply it to what this child is interested in today? Student owns the learning. Teacher owns the learning. Amazing sense of ownership. When Maria Montessori first came up with her first school in Italy over 100 years ago, 1907. Her first school, she called it Casa dei Bambini. And I don't speak Italian, but I'm told what that means. Casa dei Bambini means children's house. And I love the way that's spelled. Children apostrophe S. House. Children's house. They own it. She didn't call this school that she started the Institute for Preparing Workers for the 20th Century, or the Academy of Math and Science to compete with the Chinese, or any of those types of terms that we would use today. We want to prepare our children to do this. We want to prepare our children to be able to work this way. We want to prepare our children so that we will increase our country's GDP, or not to do anything. No, she called it children's house. Their house. They own it. Ownership. Maria Montessori said, one of my favorite quotes, I have several favorite quotes from her, but here's one of them. A child's work is to create the man he will become. And in our language now, 100 years later, this would read, a child's work is to create the man or woman that he or she will become. I love that. A child's work. Create. Ownership. These are all business terms. We typically think of this when you're starting a small business, creation, ownership, work. These children in these classrooms are running a small business. There's 25 little entrepreneurs moving around the room here. Each one of these students in these Montessori classrooms are running self-construction companies. They have a self-construction company. Let's look at it in this way. And let's use this business framework to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about things that I've seen in the classroom. I want to talk about my children. I want to talk about aviation. These aviation examples, and tie all this into this business analogy, these little entrepreneurs running around. What do we need to run a successful business? What are a couple things we need? We need a new idea. We need a new product, a new service, an invention, something to start our business with. Starting a new school. Hey, let's come up with a new school. That sort of thing. We need to be good at coming up with new ideas. We need to be comfortable with it. We need to be excited about new ideas. Another thing we need is to practice overcoming challenges. When you start a new business and you show up on day one, your internet connection doesn't work, your water's been turned off, you go to hire employees and nobody's qualified, you come up with these things happen. How do you overcome those challenges? Are you good at overcoming challenges? Another thing you need to have a successful business is to know how to deal with failure. You launch a new product and it fails, bombs. What's the next step? What do you do next after that? How do you deal with failure, mistakes, errors? And finally, what you need to have a successful business is to be among a community of successful businesses. You can't just have one company. I mean, think of like a drug cartel, right? Drug cartel, is that a business? Yes, they have a supply chain and inventory and sales force and all this. But if you destroy the neighborhood around where you work, the whole area collapses. So you need to be part of a healthy business. So let's talk about community also. So the first thing we need, new ideas. Comfortable coming up with new ideas, excited about it. My oldest son, about 2 years ago, he was 6 years old at the time. And I remember this. He runs into my room, and I'm sitting in my room, and he runs through the door, and he's got his hands in the air, and he says this. He runs in, "Dad, the first drop of water was invented over 1 million years ago." So excited. He was so excited about how old water is. All I can think of at the time is, my goodness, son, you're completely naked. He had come out of the shower, had run through the house, and had burst in my door, and now he starts jumping around. "Dad, the first drop of water was invented before the dinosaurs were on the earth. We need to look it up and see how many millions of years ago that was." Oh, he was so excited. What would cause a human being to run into a room so excited about an idea and just completely forget clothing and toweling off? I think what it was that this was his idea. And he thought this was the first time anyone in the world had ever thought of something so wonderful. This was not an idea, one of the 10 best ideas in science that his teacher had handed him on a Monday, and memorize these 10 ideas and we'll have a test on it on Friday. No, this came to him in the shower. He owned this idea, and it took over his whole body, his whole being, his brain, his heart. Everything was being put into this wonderful idea. Those of you who have started businesses, a small business, it takes over, doesn't it? It takes over your whole being. I mean, you wake up in the morning and you're thinking about it. You spend every spare minute during the day tweaking this or tweaking that. You stay up late. Hey, how can I fix this or how can I do that? It's yours. It's your business, and it takes over your whole being, and you're excited about it, and your brain and your heart and your muscles are all working together. Ownership, so important. That first classroom that Maria Montessori started in 1907 was in a slum in the worst part of Rome. And it was in the bottom floor of this tenement building. And the owners of this building were tired of these young children getting into things, breaking windows, writing graffiti in the stairwells and all this stuff. They wanted to corral these children and start a school, so they asked Maria Montessori to come in and take over. She jumped at the chance because she was the first female doctor in Rome, and she had just recently got into education and was looking for an experimental school to try out some of her techniques. So she said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll take over this school." But Maria Montessori is busy at the time. She's lecturing at the university and doing all these things. So she hires a teacher to come in and be the day-to-day person in the classroom. So in the evenings, she would talk with the teacher. "Hey, what happened today?" And the teacher would tell her, and Maria Montessori would make changes. "Hey, let's try this," or "No, let's try that." So she was doing experiments. And now and then she would come into the classroom and observe for several hours at a time. So, one day, in the classroom, they had learning materials, several block sets and sandpaper letters and things like that Maria Montessori was experimenting with. In the afternoons, after school was over, the teacher would collect all of those materials and she would put them in a cabinet on the wall. And she would close the door and she would lock it. And the reason she locked it was because she didn't want all these children to get in after hours and steal anything. Well, two things happened one day that changed the course of Montessori history. One was that the teacher forgot to lock the cabinet. And the next thing that happened was that the next morning, she overslept. So the teacher walks into the classroom the next morning and looks, the children had opened the cabinet doors, they had pulled out the materials, they were handing them down to their classmates, some had already gone off on the floor and the tables and started working on various things. Stop, I didn't tell you to get into there. Later on that evening, the teacher is apologizing to Maria Montessori. I'm sorry, I forgot to lock the cabinet. The children got into the cabinet, they pulled out the materials, they're handing them down to their classmates, they started working on them without my permission. And Maria Montessori says, say what? In Italian, of course. Say what? Say what? Try it again. Try it again the next day. And so the teacher said, okay. And she left the cabinet open the next day. And the next day. And the next day after that. And in months after that. And in other schools. And in other countries. And in other decades. And in other continents. And now that's what you do in a Montessori classroom. The children walk in the morning. They look around the room. They find something that looks interesting. They walk over to it. And they get it off the shelf. And they start working on it. Without the permission of the teacher. And some amazing discoveries came out of this. One of which happened when the very first few days of this experimental school, Maria Montessori was observing the class and she was taking notes. And she noticed that this one little 4-year-old girl, was working on this set of blocks in her lap that taught some type of math concept. So the child's working on this set of blocks, and she would finish the set of blocks, and she'd turn it upside down, and she'd do it again. And she repeated it 5 times, and 10 times, and Maria Montessori is taking notes. Wow, she did it 5 times, she did it 10 times. Maria Montessori decides, you know what, I'm going to try to see what it would take to break this child's concentration. How deeply is she really concentrating? So, she gathers some of the other children around. Hey, would anybody like to sing a song? And so this is Rome, Italy, of course. So they're singing in Italian, probably some beautiful opera. And so the children all start singing, and the girl is still concentrating. 15 times, 20 times. So eventually the children go off and do other things, and Maria Montessori is still counting. And she says, you know what? I'm going to try something else. She walks over, she picks up the chair with the child in it, and puts it up on top of a table, and sits back 30 times, 35 times, 40. On the 44th time, the girl finishes up the set of blocks, looks up, relaxed, refreshed, satisfied. And Maria Montessori puts the chair back down. Sorry about that, little girl. Okay, there you go. And the girl goes and puts the thing back on the shelf and goes off to do something else. Amazing. How had this girl concentrated so deeply and repeated something 44 times in a row and emerged on the other side refreshed and satisfied and joyful? Surely that child should be irritated and burned out. And yeah, what had happened. You and I know that for our children to learn math facts and spelling words and things like that, they have to concentrate for extended periods of time, and they have to repeat something over and over and over until they get it. We know that. Apparently, there's two ways to do that. You can do it by force. You will concentrate for the next 45 minutes, and you will repeat this, do problems 1 through 15, and if you don't, I will punish you, and if you do, I will give you a gold star, that type of thing. Or you can just have these things out in the environment. And at some point when the child chooses that particular project and they go over to it, they will choose it and they will love it and they will get deep down into the concentration and the repetition and they will learn that concept joyfully. An amazing discovery that she made in the very first days of that school that has carried on for now over a century. Ownership. That child owned that learning. Hey, I want to work on that. And when you choose it, I want to do that. It's a totally different experience. So the next thing that we need when we're running a self-construction business or a small business, we need to practice overcoming challenges. The water is turned off, the internet connection doesn't work. We practice overcoming challenges. I was in a school recently. I was going to give a presentation similar to this one, and it was during the pickup hour, right after school. So I was sitting in the lobby waiting. And as I was sitting there in the lobby waiting, lots of parents and teachers are walking by and children. Out of this commotion, a little toddler walks up. Walks up right in front of me, and there's a low table in front of me, and he walks right up to the edge of the table and reaches into the middle of the table because there's a toy sitting there. He reaches for the toy, couldn't quite reach it. It was just out of his fingertips. And he kind of sat back and looked at it, and I'm over here, and I kind of look at it, and I look at him, and I think, this could be interesting. Let's see what happens. And so he looks at the toy, and he walks back up to the table, and puts his hands on the table, and he starts working his way around the table, right in front of where I'm sitting. And there's a little chair pushed in right there, pushed into the table. And he puts his hands on the chair, and he starts to pull. And I realize, this little boy, he's going to pull the chair out, and he's going to sit in the chair, and he'll be right close to the toy then. Oh, wow. And so I watch him, and he starts to pull, but the chair doesn't move. So he pulls harder, and it doesn't move. He pulls harder, and this time it moves, but it moves sideways. He thinks it has moved all the way out, but it hasn't. And this guy, these big chubby cheeks and big chubby legs, and he tries to get in the chair, and he can't fit. So he comes back out, and he grabs the chair again, and starts to pull again. And this time it moves. It moves farther, it moves farther, it moves farther. It's almost all the way out when his mother comes in. She grabs the chair. She pulls the chair all the rest of the way out. She picks up the boy, puts him in the chair. She slides the chair forward. She moves the toy closer. Here, do you want to play with this? Oh. No. And right at the height of that boy's struggle, when he was pulling the hardest, I could almost see Maria Montessori looking down from the heavens. And the angels are singing, and that mother comes in and snatches that moment away. Children love to do difficult, challenging work. That's an amazing discovery that I have discovered as a new parent. Children love difficult work. They love to carry big milk jugs. They love to climb up on the highest thing they can find. They wouldn't want to climb up on these tables on the piano over there. They love to climb way up high. Children want to drive the car. They love to do difficult work. In Montessori classrooms, children are allowed to set difficult, challenging work for themselves and figure out how to make it happen. Just like that little boy. He saw that toy, and as soon as he couldn't reach it, boom, his brain was on fire. How am I going to reach that toy? I'm going to walk up here, and he planned ahead, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to move over here, and I'm going to move that, and control that. He was loving that challenge, and he was learning how to get good at overcoming challenges. And his mother thought it was all about getting the right answer quickly. You want the toy? Here, let me help you get it, then you'll have it. Similar to what we do in classrooms, when the teacher stands up on a Monday and says, here's what you need to learn this week. I'm going to help you get to it quickly. And that way on Friday when we take a test, you'll get 100%. Instead of, here's the environment. Find something that interests you and figure out how to make it work. Just the skill we need out in the real world when we're starting a small business or doing this or doing that. Setting difficult, challenging goals for ourselves and figuring out how to make it happen. My son, my oldest son, a wonderful family story when the first day he learned to walk. I want to tell. If any of you have read the book Montessori Madness, I talk about him in a couple of chapters. And he was born very prematurely. He was born at 1 pound, 11 ounces, and several months early, and was in the hospital for several months before he finally came home. All sorts of medical issues and this and that and the other. He's fine now. He's a happy guy, rides his bike, swims, learning to read, all these things. But he never met any of the developmental milestones on time. He didn't sit up on time, didn't crawl, didn't talk on time, nothing on time. It wasn't even on the chart. No, not even on the chart. So the day he finally learns to walk is an especially great day for my wife and I. And I missed it. I was out of town. I was out flying the airplane. And I go out of town for 7 days, and then I come home for 7 days. Out of town for a week, home for a week. I was gone for the week when my wife called. And she said, he took his first step today. What a wonderful thing to hear. And I asked her, tell me all about it. What was he wearing? What did he say? Where was he standing? And so she was telling me everything about it. At the end of that week, I rush home and I burst through the door and he's crawling. And he crawled for the entire week I was home. I go back out of town, and my wife starts calling again. He took 2 steps today. He took 5 steps today. Stop telling me this. So, by the end of that week, I come home. It's late at night. He's asleep. But the next morning, I'm watching him. I go out to the garage the next morning, and I'm working on something. And I left the front door ajar so that he could crawl out and come visit me if he wanted to. Sure enough, a few minutes later, he comes crawling out the door, but instead of crawling towards me, he crawls towards our driveway, where our car is parked in the driveway. So I watch him crawl over there, and then he puts one hand up on the door of the car, then he puts the other hand up on the door, and he pulls himself up, and then lets go, and steps out, and starts really walking. And I drop what I'm working on over here, and I run over behind him. Wow, I can't believe this, look at him go. I'm not saying this out loud, but I'm just like, whoa, I can't believe this, wow. And he's really going. Now, he's not walking like this, of course. He's got his hands back and he's shaking, and stumbling side to side. You've all seen that. But he's really going. And what a wonderful thing to see. So I'm following behind him. I can't believe this, wow. And we go 5 steps, 10 steps, 15 steps. And now we're getting close to the street. So I decide, well, we can't walk in the street. So I go to grab him to pick him up. But I don't want to stop him here. I mean, he's on a roll. So I decided at the last minute, let me just look for cars. And I looked to the left, there's no cars. Look to the right, no cars. I guess you could walk in the street. I wouldn't have picked that as the place to learn to walk, but there's no cars, so let's go. So he stumbles out into the middle of the street, and I follow right behind him. As we get into the middle of the street, he turns and diagonally walks back to the side of the street, steps up onto the grassy swale, and over onto the sidewalk. And then he turns again and steps back across the grass, and he's going to step on the street again. So I look for cars again. Left, no cars. Right, no cars. Out into the street we go. And we zigzag like that down the street. Now, 4 or 5 houses down, there is another street that did have a lot of traffic. Cars are going by. So as we get close to there, I do stop him. I grab him, I pick him up, turn him around, I set him back down, and he zigzags all the way back to our house. Just an amazing accomplishment to go from 5 steps to 500 steps. And I realized in those 5 minutes, a short length of time there, in those 5 minutes, he learned so much. He learned how to balance. He learned how to turn. He learned how to step on the street with his bare feet, with the pebbles felt like. He stepped on the grass, the different contours, how to turn the sidewalk, all these things. He learned so much in 5 minutes. But if he could have talked at that time, and I would have asked him, or somebody would have asked him, who taught you how to walk? He would have said, I taught myself how to walk. And I realized he never even really knew I was there. He thinks that he did this all himself. I mean, here I am, I'm the dad, I'm the teacher. I was, looking out for cars and doing all this stuff behind him. He never even really knew I was there. He learned so much, and he never even really knew I was there. Now, yeah, I was the teacher in that situation. Unwittingly, I had prepared a learning environment for him. He had a large flat surface to walk on. He had a car door to pull up on. He had different contours in the environment to challenge himself with. And when he reached the edge of a safety boundary, I physically stopped him and turned him around. So yes, I was the teacher there, but he never really knew I was there. And that brings up an amazing quote, another quote from Maria Montessori that just floored me when I first came across it. The goal of a Montessori teacher should be to be able to say, the children are working as if I did not exist. Are you kidding me? The goal of a Montessori teacher should be able to say, the children are working as if I did not exist. Well, that's the opposite of the schools that I was familiar with, where the teacher is the center of learning. Everything happens through me, the teacher. I tell you what page to read. I tell you what homework to do. I tell you what test to take, what the correct answer is. I tell you if you got it right or wrong. Everything happens through me, the wonderful, great teacher. Children are working as if I did not exist. That reminds me of this hilarious fad I saw recently called planking. Has anyone heard of this? I think it's hilarious. My wife hates it, so some of you might not like it. It's called planking. Some people have heard of it. Here's what it is. For those of you who have not heard about planking, here's what it is. You act like a board. You act like a plank. You lie flat down on the floor, and you put your feet together and your hands together. You lie down, and you look like you're a board there. That's not the funny part. The funny part funny part is you do this in an unusual location, like on the top of a table over there, or on the sidewalk, or in the middle of a train station, or and then your buddies take a picture of it and you put it on Facebook. Everybody laughs. That's what planking is. And I thought, well, first of all, does anybody want to see a demonstration? No, oh, some no. Okay, some yes and some no. Okay, all right. Those of you who say no, just close your eyes. All right, this is planking right here. No, now it's all over the internet. It's so. What just happened there? First of all, we had this man was up here talking to us, and all of a sudden he's lying face down on the floor. We were kind of having a conversation, and I've kind of removed myself from that conversation that we were having, and I realized, wow, what if I could get hundreds of Montessori teachers from around the country to send me photos of themselves planking in the middle of their classrooms. And the children are working as if they did not exist. Wow, how powerful would that be? But then I thought, the lawsuits would get started. The child was injured, and meanwhile the teacher was lying on the floor. Don't send me pictures of yourself planking. The children are working as if I did not exist. That's the goal. Not on day one, not on the month one. Over time, that should be the goal. Now, one of the problems with that, with the teacher doing that, is one of the biggest tasks of the teacher in a Montessori classroom is to observe. To observe the children. And it's hard to do that when you're lying flat down. So let me relate this, learning how to overcome challenges and owning the learning. Children are working as if the teacher did not exist. They're owning it, they're owning that learning. Let me relate that concept to aviation, to flying airplanes. This concept is out in the real world, in architecture, engineering, and all these wonderful fields. Let's talk about aviation. I am a flight instructor on this airplane. It's a Cessna Citation 5 Encore. It's a business jet. Has 7 seats, so it gives you